Dr. Lucas had spent the last 10 years working as a doctor in faraway places, helping people in need, but missing out on the most important thing, being with his family during the holidays. Christmas had always been a time of reunion and joy for him, but for the past decade, it was just another day spent away from his loved ones. This year, things were going to be different. Dr. Lucas was finally heading home, his heart filled with excitement. He could already picture the warm hugs, the laughter around the dinner table, and the joy of celebrating Christmas with his family after so many years apart. He had worked tirelessly, and now the time had come to be with those who mattered most. But just as he was about to drive into the familiar streets of his hometown, a heavy snowstorm suddenly rolled in, covering the road with a thick layer of snow. His car sputtered and came to a halt, the engine refusing to start. The storm howled outside, and Dr. Lucas knew he was stuck in the middle of nowhere, with no way to reach his family. Frustration grew in his chest as he looked around. The clock was ticking, and he was running out of time. All he wanted was to make it home, to finally be with his family this Christmas. But fate seemed to have other plans for him. The wind howled like a wild animal, pushing snow in every direction, making it nearly impossible for Lucas to see anything beyond a few feet. The storm had intensified quickly, and the once quiet road was now an endless stretch of white, as if the world had been swallowed up by snow. Lucas tried to start his car again, but the engine refused to cooperate. The temperature was dropping fast, and he knew he couldn't stay in the freezing cold much longer. He had to find shelter, or he'd risk freezing out here in the storm. His heart raced as the snow piled up, and the wind made it harder to move forward. Exhausted and desperate, Lucas continued walking, hoping to find some place to take refuge. After what felt like an eternity, he spotted a faint outline in the distance, a barn, its shape barely visible through the swirling snowflakes. A tiny spark of hope flickered inside him. With his last bit of strength, Lucas made his way toward the barn, stumbling through the thick snow. As he drew closer, the barn grew clearer, offering a glimmer of safety in the middle of the raging storm. Relief washed over him as he pushed open the creaky door, stepping into the warmth of the barn. Though it was simple and rustic, it was a shelter, a place to escape the biting cold. For the first time that night, Lucas felt like he had found a chance to rest, even if just for a while. But little did he know, this barn was about to change everything for him. As Lucas stepped deeper into the barn, shaking off the snow from his clothes, he noticed something strange in the dim light. In the far corner of the barn, a large figure stood still, breathing heavily. At first, Lucas thought it might be just another animal, but as he got closer, his heart sank. There, in the shadows, was a majestic horse, its coat glistening even in the low light. But something was wrong. The horse was limping, its right leg bent awkwardly, and its eyes looked strained, as if it had been through something painful. Lucas's eyes widened. This beautiful creature was injured, and it was alone in the barn, with no one to care for it. His mind raced. He had come here seeking shelter, but he couldn't turn his back on this horse. His heart tugged at the sight of its pain. Despite being eager to get back to his family after so many years, Lucas knew he couldn't just walk away. He slowly approached the horse, speaking softly to calm it, his doctor's instincts kicking in. As he knelt to examine the animal, he noticed that the injuries were more serious than he first thought. The horse's leg was badly hurt, and there were cuts along its side that looked fresh. Lucas took a deep breath. He was in a rush to get home, but the horse needed him now. The decision was clear. He couldn't leave without helping. With steady hands, he began to assess the injuries, determined to do what he could to make sure the horse would survive. Lucas's heart raced as the weight of the situation pressed down on him. He had come so far, and now his long-awaited reunion with his family seemed out of reach. But there was no time to think about that now. The horse needed him. Despite his exhaustion from the long journey, Lucas's instincts as a doctor kicked in. He knelt beside the injured animal, his breath visible in the cold air. His hands, though numb from the storm's chill, worked with steady precision as he carefully cleaned the horse's wounds. He knew how to treat injuries. He had done it countless times on people, but this was different. This was an animal in need, and he couldn't turn away. He tied a cloth around the horse's injured leg to stop the bleeding, gently murmuring to the animal as he worked. The horse, though clearly in pain, seemed to trust him, allowing him to continue his work without resisting. Lucas's heart swelled with empathy for the creature. Despite the urgency of his own situation, he focused entirely on the horse's well-being. As he worked, something unexpected began to happen. The initial anxiety and frustration that had gripped him slowly melted away. The bond between him and the horse grew stronger with every move he made. It was as if, for the first time in years, Lucas had truly stopped to care for someone else, and in that moment, nothing else seemed more important. The clock was ticking. The storm raged outside, and he still had a long way to go before he could reach his family. But in his heart, Lucas knew that saving this horse was the right thing to do. The quiet connection between them deepened, as if the horse understood the sacrifice he was making. As Lucas wiped the last of the blood from his hands, he took a deep breath, feeling both physically drained and mentally exhausted. The storm outside howled, but the barn was quiet now, except for the soft sound of the horse's breathing. The animal seemed calmer, no longer writhing in pain, and Lucas felt a sense of relief wash over him. He glanced at his watch. He still had a long way to go before he could reach his family, and the time was slipping away. But just as he began to turn toward the door, something strange happened. The barn, once silent, seemed to hum with energy. Lucas froze. He blinked in disbelief as the horse, which had been lying down moments before, slowly began to rise to its feet. At first, it was just the way the horse moved, stronger, steadier than before. But then, something even more remarkable happened. The horse's eyes began to glow with a soft, ethereal light, as if a hidden power was suddenly awakening within it. Lucas stumbled backward in surprise, his heart racing. Before his eyes, the horse's injuries seemed to vanish, as if they had never been there at all. Its coat shimmered with a silvery glow, and its presence filled the barn with a warm, almost otherworldly aura. The air around Lucas seemed to vibrate, and for a brief moment, everything else, the storm, his tiredness, his long journey, disappeared. The horse stood tall and proud, no longer just a creature in need of help, but something far more extraordinary. With a gentle movement, the horse turned its head toward Lucas, as if recognizing him, and then, in a voice that echoed in Lucas's mind, the horse spoke. "Thank you, kind doctor," it said, its voice soft yet filled with immense power. "You have shown me a kindness few would have given. In return, I offer you a gift beyond your imagination." Lucas, still in shock, could hardly comprehend what was happening. But deep down, he knew that the horse was no ordinary animal. It was a magical being, and his simple act of kindness had awakened something truly miraculous. Lucas stood there frozen, his heart racing, as the glowing horse spoke to him in a voice that echoed in his mind. He could hardly believe what was happening. A magical creature standing before him, offering him something in return for his kindness. He had only done what any good person would do, help an animal in need. But this was beyond anything he had ever imagined. The horse's gaze softened as it took a step closer to him. Its powerful yet graceful presence seemed to fill the barn with an aura of warmth and peace. "You helped me when others would have turned away," the horse continued, its voice calm but filled with gratitude. "You saw beyond your own desires and acted out of compassion even when your own plans were at risk. That is a rare thing in this world." Lucas, still in a daze, took a step back. The words hung in the air, and despite his exhaustion and the cold that still clung to him, a warmth spread through his chest. The horse's words felt genuine, and for a moment, Lucas felt like he had done something truly special. But as the creature continued, Lucas's thoughts turned to his family. "I appreciate your kind words," Lucas said, his voice shaky. "But I've already given what I could. I've only helped because it was the right thing to do. I don't need anything in return." The horse tilted its head as if considering his response. The glowing light in its eyes dimmed slightly, but its presence remained strong. "You misunderstand, Doctor," it said gently. "This is not about what you need, but what you deserve. You have shown the true meaning of kindness, and for that, I offer you a gift, a reward for your selflessness." Lucas, still unsure of what was happening, shook his head. "I don't understand," he said quietly. "How could you possibly repay me for something so simple?" The horse smiled, a peaceful, knowing smile that seemed to illuminate the entire barn. "Ah, you will understand soon enough," it said. "I offer you a chance, an opportunity for something greater than what you've ever dreamed." With that, the horse stepped back, its magical glow intensifying once again. Lucas could feel his heart racing, his mind spinning with questions. What could this creature possibly offer him? And more importantly, why did he feel both grateful and reluctant at the same time? Lucas followed the glowing horse out of the barn, his mind racing as he tried to process everything that had just happened. The cold wind and the snowstorm seemed to vanish, replaced by an eerie silence that filled the air around him. The horse's hooves clicked gently against the ground as they moved forward, and Lucas couldn't help but feel like he was walking into another world, a world where nothing made sense, yet everything felt perfectly right. As they ventured further, the landscape around them began to change. The barn was no longer visible, and in its place stood a vast, enchanted forest. The trees were tall and shimmering, their leaves glowing with a soft, otherworldly light. The air smelled fresh, like rain on a spring morning, and everything felt magical. Lucas was speechless. He had seen many wonders in his life as a doctor, but nothing like this. He had entered a realm beyond anything he could have imagined, a place that seemed to defy the rules of nature. The snow had stopped falling, and the sky above was filled with stars that sparkled brighter than any he had ever seen. "This is incredible," Lucas whispered, his voice barely audible as he looked around in awe. The horse moved gracefully through the glowing forest, its presence calming and guiding. As they walked, the surroundings began to change again. The trees opened up to reveal a vast, sparkling lake, its waters clear as glass. In the distance, Lucas could see a large mountain rising high, its peak hidden by mist. But something about it felt mysterious and full of promise. "This place," Lucas began, his voice trembling with wonder. "It's unlike anything I've ever seen. But why are we here?" The horse stopped and turned to face him, its eyes glowing with an inner light. "You are here because you showed kindness, Doctor," the horse said, its voice soft but filled with meaning. "And this world is the reward for those who act selflessly. But what you'll discover here is not just beauty. This place holds something more, a treasure, a secret that will change your life forever." Lucas felt a shiver run down his spine. As they moved deeper into the hidden world, he realized that this place was not just a dream or an illusion. It was real, and it held something powerful, something that would change everything he thought he knew about life, fate, and destiny. With each step he took, Lucas could feel the weight of the horse's words settling in. This world was not just beautiful, it was full of possibilities. And what awaited him at the end of this journey was something that could transform his life in ways he had never imagined. Lucas followed the glowing horse deeper into the mystical world, his heart racing with anticipation. The forest had slowly given way to an open clearing, bathed in the soft light of 1,000 glowing orbs that seemed to float in the air like stars. At the center of the clearing was a large mound of snow, untouched and pure, as if it had been waiting for this moment. The horse stopped and motioned toward the snow-covered mound. "This is the treasure," the horse said, its voice echoing softly. "It is yours, as a reward for your kindness." Lucas hesitated, his breath catching in his throat. He had been so focused on helping the horse, on following the path laid out before him, that he hadn't expected anything more. But now, standing before this treasure, he couldn't believe his eyes. With a trembling hand, he brushed the snow away, revealing an old wooden chest. The chest was adorned with intricate carvings, its surface worn with age, but it still glowed with an undeniable aura of magic. As Lucas opened the chest, his eyes widened in awe. Inside was a vast collection of gold coins, sparkling jewels, and treasures beyond his wildest imagination. The chest was overflowing with wealth, riches that could change his life forever. For a moment, Lucas stood frozen, overwhelmed by the sheer abundance before him. His heart raced as he thought about all the possibilities. He could return to his family, a man of unimaginable wealth. He could live a life of luxury, never having to work again. But as the weight of the treasure settled on his shoulders, something inside Lucas shifted. He thought back to the long hours he had spent working as a doctor, the sacrifices he had made, and the people he had helped. He realized that this treasure, as valuable as it was, couldn't be the true reward. It was the lesson that kindness, compassion, and selflessness were worth far more than any material wealth. Lucas slowly closed the chest, a deep sense of clarity washing over him. The wealth was tempting, but it was not what he truly needed. The real treasure, he realized, was the understanding he had gained. The horse had led him here not to show him gold or jewels, but to show him the power of kindness, the power to change lives, his own included. Looking up at the horse, Lucas smiled, a peaceful understanding filling his heart. "Thank you," he whispered, the words barely leaving his lips. The horse nodded, its glowing eyes full of wisdom. "You have learned the greatest treasure of all," the horse said gently. "The gift of kindness and selflessness. This is the magic that will transform your life and the lives of others." Lucas stood there, a quiet sense of gratitude flowing through him. The treasure had been revealed, not in gold or jewels, but in the lesson that would guide him for the rest of his life. Lucas stood in the clearing, staring at the chest before him. The glow of the treasure cast a soft, warm light on his face, but it also filled him with confusion. The gold, jewels, and riches were dazzling, and for a moment he couldn't help but imagine what life would be like with such wealth. He could provide for his family in ways he had never dreamed of, live without financial worries, and enjoy luxuries he had once thought impossible. But as the weight of the chest seemed to grow heavier in his hands, another thought crept into his mind. He looked back at the horse, still standing nearby, its eyes shining with quiet understanding. What really matters? Lucas couldn't shake the feeling that the treasure was more than just money. The horse had promised him this reward because of one thing: his kindness. He hadn't helped the horse for any personal gain. In fact, helping the injured animal had cost him his time, his energy, and his plans. He had been so eager to get home to his family, to reunite after a decade of hard work abroad. Yet, when faced with the choice to help an animal in need, he had set his desires aside without hesitation. As he pondered the treasure, Lucas realized something deep within himself. The wealth in the chest, no matter how vast, would never be as valuable as the kindness that had brought him here. The real gift was the reminder that selflessness, compassion, and doing what was right in the face of adversity were far more powerful than material wealth. It wasn't the money that would change his life, it was the heart behind his actions. The horse's eyes gleamed as if it knew exactly what Lucas was thinking. In that moment, Lucas understood. The treasure wasn't the chest full of gold. The true reward was the lesson about the magic of kindness. He had received something far more precious than riches, a deeper understanding of who he was and what truly mattered in life. The horse's gift wasn't about material wealth. It was about the wealth of the soul, the richness that came from compassion and the ability to make a difference in the lives of others. That, Lucas realized, was the greatest treasure of all. With the chest of riches safely tucked away, Lucas began the long journey back to his family. The snowstorm had finally cleared, and the path ahead seemed brighter than it had in days. But even as he drove, his mind was consumed by everything that had happened. He wasn't the same man who had left for work all those years ago. The gold and jewels in the chest were real, and they represented a life Lucas had never imagined for himself. The possibilities felt endless. He could build a mansion, give his family the best education, travel the world, and live a life of comfort. But as the car sped through the snow-covered roads, Lucas couldn't shake the deeper understanding he'd gained from his encounter with the magical horse. The treasure in his car wasn't what mattered. The lessons he had learned, the importance of kindness, of giving without expecting anything in return, had changed him in ways no amount of money ever could. He had helped an animal in need without thinking of the rewards, and in return, the universe had gifted him with more than he could ever have dreamed. But now that the wealth was within his grasp, Lucas found himself torn. He wanted to use the treasure to make his family's life better, to provide them with everything he hadn't been able to offer while working abroad. Yet, at the same time, he couldn't ignore the deeper realization that what really mattered in life wasn't wealth, but love, compassion, and the selfless acts we do for others. As he neared his home, Lucas took a deep breath, feeling a sense of peace. The house loomed in the distance, warm lights shining through the windows. His family was waiting, and despite all that had happened, it was them, their love and togetherness, that mattered most. The treasure he carried in the car was just a symbol of the kind of man he wanted to be. Someone who would always choose kindness over wealth, compassion over greed, and love over material gain. When Lucas walked through the door, his family rushed to embrace him. But as he held them in his arms, he knew the greatest gift of all wasn't the fortune he'd gained. It was the chance to be with them, to cherish the moments that really counted. And in that moment, he felt more wealthy than he ever could have imagined. As Lucas pulled into the driveway, the sight of his family's warm, inviting home filled him with an overwhelming sense of peace. The storm had passed, and the night was quiet. But the heartwarming sound of laughter and conversation echoed from inside. He had made it home, and everything felt just as it should. His family rushed to greet him, their faces full of surprise and joy. They couldn't believe the stories of his sudden fortune, the treasure, the horse, the magical world he had discovered. The gold and jewels seemed almost too incredible to be true. They celebrated together, their happiness filling the room like the glow of Christmas lights. But as they all gathered around the table toasting to his return, Lucas couldn't help but feel a deep sense of gratitude, not for the treasure, but for something far more important, the time he was sharing with the people he loved. For years, he had worked tirelessly, sacrificing moments with his family in pursuit of his career. Now, as they laughed and shared stories, he realized that all the wealth in the world couldn't replace these precious moments. The real gift of Christmas wasn't the treasure he had brought home. It was the love and warmth that surrounded him. As his family chattered excitedly, Lucas took a quiet moment to reflect. He thought back to the injured horse, the magical being that had appeared in his life, and the lesson he had learned. Kindness is the true source of joy. His willingness to help a creature in need had changed his life in ways he could never have imagined. Yet, it was in the simplest of things, the smile of his children, the warmth of his partner's embrace, that he found his true happiness. The gold and jewels may have been glittering symbols of wealth, but the love of his family and the joy of being together was the real treasure. Lucas smiled, realizing that this Christmas he had received a gift greater than anything money could buy. And as the evening wore on, he held his loved ones close, knowing that no amount of fortune could ever compare to the gift of time well spent with those who mattered most. As the warmth of the Christmas celebration surrounded him, Lucas found a quiet moment to step outside. The snow had stopped falling, and the night sky was clear, with stars twinkling like tiny diamonds. The world seemed peaceful, and as he gazed up, he couldn't help but reflect on everything that had happened. His heart felt full, not from the wealth he had gained, but from the lessons he had learned along the way. The journey from the snowstorm to the mystical realm and the treasure he had found had been nothing short of extraordinary. Yet, it wasn't the gold or jewels that had changed him. It was the simple act of kindness, of choosing to help the injured horse when he could have ignored it and rushed home. That one decision had led him to everything that truly mattered. Lucas thought about the countless other lives that might have been touched by similar acts of selflessness and compassion. He wondered how many others had experienced miracles of their own, born from simple acts of kindness. The horse, a creature in need, had led him not only to riches, but to a deeper understanding of what Christmas was truly about. It wasn't about material wealth or grand gestures. It was about love, compassion, and helping others, no matter how small the act. As he stood there in the quiet of the night, Lucas knew that his life would never be the same. The magic of Christmas wasn't in the treasure he had found, but in the way his heart had been opened to the true spirit of giving. His life had been touched by a miracle, and he would carry its lessons with him, sharing kindness and compassion wherever he went. The journey had come full circle. What had begun as a rushed attempt to reunite with his family had turned into something far greater, a reminder that the real gifts of life are found in the moments we share with others and the kindness we show along the way. As the soft glow of the Christmas lights flickered from the windows behind him, Lucas smiled to himself. He had received a gift far more valuable than anything money could buy, the gift of a heart full of love, gratitude, and the understanding that true Christmas miracles are born from kindness. As Lucas sat by the warm fire, the crackling of the flames filling the room, he thought back to that snowy night, the night that had changed his life forever. The treasure, the riches, and the wealth he had gained were now just a distant memory. What remained in his heart was something far more valuable, a deep understanding of what Christmas truly meant. Looking around at his family, who were happily enjoying the holiday, Lucas knew that the real magic of Christmas wasn't in the presents wrapped under the tree or the glittering wealth he had acquired. No, it was in the simple acts of kindness that had the power to change lives. It was in the way a small gesture, like helping an injured horse, could lead to a transformation far greater than anything money could provide. The horse's gift had been more than a fortune. It had been a lesson in compassion, a reminder that the true spirit of Christmas was found in love, giving, and helping others, no matter the cost. The wealth had brought him material comfort, but the kindness he had shown had given him something far more profound, a new sense of purpose and a heart full of gratitude. As he gazed out the window at the soft blanket of snow falling over the quiet world, Lucas smiled. He knew that the magic of Christmas wasn't something you could touch or buy. It wasn't in the riches or the grand celebrations. It was in the small, everyday moments when we choose to do good for others, even when no one is watching. Lucas vowed, then and there, that he would spend the rest of his life sharing this message, that kindness, not wealth, was the greatest gift we could give. The true magic of Christmas lived in the love we spread and the good we do for those around us. With a heart full of peace and joy, Lucas knew his life had been forever changed. And from that moment on, he would carry the horse's lesson with him, sharing kindness wherever he went, knowing that the best gifts are the ones that come from the heart.